You know, I come across a lot of women who ask a lot of different questions. And when I create these videos, I base it off a lot of requests that are being made. And if anyone who's made a request and I didn't cover it yet, my apologies. But hopefully, if I saw it, I will get to it at some point. But one of the things that kind of it hurts a little bit, and not hurts me as in like personally I'm hurt, but it's just unfortunate to see when I see other women comment in what is an insensitive way, like, oh, all you need to know is to leave them, or it's common sense, and it's like, listen, if it was that simple for everybody, they wouldn't need to ask the question or request a video about it. And though it may be a simple, clear-cut thing for you, other people are struggling, right? And we want to speak to where they are to help them navigate through that. So, one of the topics I've been asked about many times is how to deal with a man who flirts with other women or who's not setting boundaries with other women. Now, again, I know some of y'all be like, there's only one answer to that. But it's like, no. We got to dive in and consider all things. And let me also say this. I think one of the things that we have to start to understand, or I want more of you to understand, is that there's a lot of things that when we are not in it, we may say, well, I would never deal with that, or I would never accept that, or I would whatever, right? Or I would do this if I was in that situation. And then you find yourself in that situation and you realize sometimes it gets a little bit more complex than that. There's a lot more factors at play. There are things tugging at your heart. You feel conflicted. You name it, right? So we got to understand that not everyone's at the same place, not at the same place of awareness, not the same place of embracing the strength they do have, because I want every woman to understand you have the strength to do what is best for you. But sometimes in that moment, you are struggling to embrace that strength. And that, again, some people need encouragement, guidance on these things. So I want to cover for them how to handle a man who flirts with other women. Because also sometimes, as crazy as the situation may seem on the surface, sometimes it's fixable. I know that might sound crazy to some of y'all, but I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of different things. Sometimes it's fixable. So we do have to also consider that. So with that said, let's break down how I feel you need to handle this. And this one I usually leave at the end, but I'm just going to start off right with it. Number one thing you can do is you can let him go. Now, I know I just got through saying we can't just be saying, oh, just walk away. It's that simple, because it's easier said than done, right? But I just want to cover it in the sense that, listen, we got to get to a point of understanding not everyone shares our values. No matter how much we may think this should be the norm, this should be the standard for everyone, this is quote unquote common sense. Different people have a different vision or desire for what their relationship will look like. And you can't get yourself in a battle of trying to convince someone else to see it the way you see it. If y'all don't see it the same way, we just need to go our separate ways, okay? So I recently was coaching a client, that's actually a guy, and I won't get into too much details of his situation, but I'll say this. He had certain boundaries he felt like should be in place when it comes to other men, exes, male friendships, things of that nature. And he's experienced some women who were completely on board with his belief of things. But then he has a woman who's not completely on board with it. And it's like we have to discuss the fact of you can't force anyone to see it your way, okay? And understand that in that person's mind, they may view it as not a big deal. Now, the key to helping us discover as quickly as possible if we share the same values or not, and how we perceive certain things, because we should not assume, is to ask questions, is to have discussions as early as possible. So one of the things that I've mentioned to clients before is you can, I like the idea of throwing out hypothetical scenarios and saying, okay, how do you think something like that should be handled, right? So I'm gonna give you an example. Let's just say you're two people who like going out to dance. You come from a background of you like going out every now and then. That's just, that's who y'all are. That's how you're wired. And let's just say, all right, well, because you like to go out, because you like to dance, there's always that possible scenario of when you're out, somebody comes to want to dance with you. And it's as simple as saying, okay, listen, if one of us is out at the club, at a party, whatever, and someone wants to dance with us, do you consider that crossing an inappropriate line? Right? Now, again, I know some of y'all are saying, of course that's crossing an inappropriate line, but we cannot jump to that assumption because to some people, it is harmless. It's not a big deal. There are some people out there who really feel like flirting is harmless. It's not a big deal. And it's not to say anyone's feelings are invalid. It's simply to say we need to discover if we share the same type of feelings about it. And if we don't, we have to be prepared to walk away. All right. And so when you are dealing with a man who doesn't set those boundaries, who entertains other women, you want to give him a chance. Let's just get to the next point because what I'm about to say is really on the next point. So let's keep this thing going. Now, before I get to the first point, I want to say this. Whenever we find ourselves in unhappy or unhealthy relationships, one of the best things we can ask ourselves is, how do we? Because understanding the root of the issue is going to help us in overcoming the struggles that we're facing. And there's a lot that sometimes we're not considering that we need to reflect upon. And that's going to help us break free from whatever negativity that we're experiencing. And that's why I'm such a big believer in therapy, because I know for me, when I experience dealing with things I did not need to be dealing with, it was therapy that helped me have my breakthrough. And I want you to experience that kind of a breakthrough. And that's why I'm so thankful for BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and you think you'd benefit from a therapy session, click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com, and that's betterhelp.com/Stephan Speaks, and get 10% off your first month of therapy. All right, so let's go beyond the obvious just walking away, right? Another way to handle a man who flirts with other women or doesn't set boundaries with them is to discuss the issue, not attack the issue. And in addition to that, get to the root of the issue. So this is a principle you should apply when it comes to addressing any issues or concerns in a relationship. You have to understand that anytime someone feels attacked, it is human nature to get defensive. It is human nature to possibly shut down, to deflect, to become aggressive themselves. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when people feel attacked. And what I've seen in a lot of situations is rather than talking about things and trying to gain an understanding or come to a resolution, we're just either offended or we want to just let off on them or we just go off on them, whatever the case may be. And it doesn't accomplish anything good. Like, even if in that moment it allow you to get some things off your chest, it's now created a very negative environment, right? And many times it doesn't get you the full truth because, well, if you're going to attack them off the rip, they're not going to feel comfortable opening up about what's really going on with them, right? So you got to learn to address it. You got to learn how to talk to someone in a very calm, loving manner. I'm a firm believer that a great way to achieve that, or for those who struggle with that, is to start off by writing a letter first. Because in writing a letter, you can get everything out that you need to get out. You can check your tone. You can make sure the delivery is solid, right? And then that person can sit with it, read it, process it. Because when we talk to people verbally about these issues, one, sometimes it's hard to control our spirit, our energy behind it because we are mad or we are frustrated, right? We do feel some kind of way. We do feel disrespected, right? Even if that wasn't their intention, that may be how you feel. And that pours out of you and it's hard to manage sometimes. But with the letter, you avoid that problem occurring. As well as when you talk about things verbally, people tend to listen to rebuttal. When people read a letter, they're usually reading to understand and process. Okay? So to me, it's a more efficient manner of properly addressing the issue at hand. But to get back to the original point I was making, as far as discuss, do not attack. Again, when you go into these conversations, you have to ask yourself this: am I going to focus on pride or progress? Say it again. Am I going to focus on pride or progress? Pride says, I'm going to talk however I want to talk. Pride says, if I feel some kind of way, I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to attack. I'm not going to have a filter. None of that. And I'm just going to be in my feelings. Progress says, let me go about this in the most efficient, even strategic way to get an end result that brings resolution. Now, resolution may not mean he corrects the behavior. Resolution may not mean you'll be able to continue in this relationship. Resolution means you get to find out, you have your best chance of finding out the truth of what's going on with this man and a clear picture of, can you move forward with him? Okay? It can go either way, but you'll have a more definitive answer of what's going on here. Is this a man who just won't respect the boundaries that you feel should be in place? Or, okay, maybe he got beside himself for various reasons, or he didn't realize how much this might be a problem, and now he's willing to correct it. And now, okay, we can move forward. So again, if we want to achieve progress, cannot attack. We have to discuss. And I mentioned getting to the root of the issue. So a lot of the mistake a lot of people make is that when addressing things like this, you're so focused. So I'll give an example. He's liking some pictures on Instagram, right? He's liking these half naked or beautiful women, whatever. And you feel some kind of way about it. So you address it, right? And he's like, okay, I'll stop doing it. And okay, that's cool that he stopped, right? But we're not really getting to the root of why he felt he should do it in the first place. Was it a matter of he just didn't feel comfortable with it? What was there something else going on? Now, granted, is it automatic that a man's just going to give you the real hardcore truth of why he does what he does? No, a lot of times it's going to be tough to get that out of people. But I do think that should be something we should strive to see if we can get to the bottom of it. Because if we don't get to the bottom of it, there's a very good chance that this behavior is going to pop back up. Now, here's a quick story before I move on to the next point that I want to give. One time I was coaching a couple, they were engaged, and the man got caught flirting with women online. And so they had this session with me, and from the jump, he was apologetic. He was like, I messed up. You know, I don't know why I did it. I'm going to stop. I love this woman. I want to marry her, boom, 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 boom. And she was like, yeah, she just wanted to make sure we address certain issues so that they can move forward in marriage. And I was like, listen, I'm proud of you and happy that you are taking accountability, that you are saying you're going to correct this issue. And I do believe genuinely his desire and heart was to not do that again, that he lost sight of things and crossed a line he knows he should not cross ever again. And he does genuinely want to be with this woman. However, I had to keep trying to pull out of him, why though? What even got you to this place? Because if we don't know what got you to this place, we can't fortify this relationship in a way that allows us to avoid the chances of this occurring again. And what eventually did come out, and some of y'all may hear this and feel like, oh, that's an excuse, or there's no explanation that needs to be given. Listen, it's not always that simple. What came out was that he felt very neglected. And he didn't say that in a way like I'm blaming it on that for why I did it. I was the one who was like, no, you need to tell me like how you've been feeling, what's going on with you, because you didn't just start flirting with them for no reason, right? And then reluctantly, he was like, a lot of times I feel like when I need her attention, she's not there. She was a very successful woman. She was traveling a lot. She wasn't available a lot, and he wasn't getting the attention. And I said, okay, I'm so happy you now revealed that, because we can't think we're gonna make this right, and we still have this ongoing issue of you feeling neglected. All right. We can acknowledge you did wrong, and that needs to change. And you cannot just, because you feel neglected, default to crossing lines with people. But we can't ignore the neglect either. And so we had to address that as well in order to, what I feel is achieve true harmony and to, again, fortify that relationship. So all that to say, yes, we got to discuss, not attack, and we got to get to the root, because that's such a huge piece of the puzzle. All right, so got a few more to go. And so another thing you need to do in how to handle a man who is flirting with other women or not setting boundaries with other women is you need to discuss the boundaries that now need to be in place. So, and not just with that specific issue, but in general. So again, using the example of liking pictures on Instagram, a lot of times the couples will address the specific issue of liking pictures on Instagram, but they don't discuss the overall issue of setting boundaries with other women, right? And what is considered appropriate or inappropriate behavior. And so as I tell you guys a lot, you don't want to assume. You don't want to take it as, well, they should just know. Again, no, have a discussion. Because my thing is this, if they're really not about being serious, if they're not really into you, then what the discussion will expose is they're willing to correct the issue after it's made clear, right? Like I always say, the true test of a man being serious about you is not necessarily what he does or knows on his own. It's how he handles your feelings and concerns, all right? It's so completely different type of example, but I've seen so many situations where a man trying to date a woman and he's texting a lot. And the woman in her head is like, you're a grown man. You should know if you're trying to court a woman, you need to call her. I'm not dealing with this. Cut him off. And I'm like, wait a minute now. He may not understand how you view that. He may have dealt with women who prefer texting, so he does not know that texting you so much would be an issue. He may think calling you might be being too thirsty, right? So he's trying to play it cool. And so by simply having a conversation about it first, if he's really genuine about being with you, he'll fix it. If he's not genuine about being with you, he'll either make excuses, continue with his behavior, or he may do it for a little bit and then revert back to the same old, same old. Now we've exposed them even clearer. So that's an example of why I'm always going to be a firm believer of discussing things first, because I've seen so many situations and potential relationships end because of misunderstandings and expectations and standards not being discussed. Okay? So with that said, you got to now discuss the boundaries you believe should be in place. And again, like I said earlier, if you two cannot come into alignment and agreement with what those boundaries are, then that's just more evidence of we're not a good fit for each other. Okay. Now, I think what's important for me to address also is I've seen this on both sides, men and women, where you feel a certain way about what boundaries should be in place. So let's say, for example, you don't like the idea of best friends of the opposite sex. And to be more specific, because I know this is another hot topic, let's say not just, all right, we cool and we talk every now and then. That type of best friend where they're talking to them every single day, okay? Whereas there'll be some people who feel like, oh, you're being insecure. That's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. So then what happens is a lot of people, in fear of being called insecure or in questioning themselves, is this an insecurity issue? Maybe I should just be okay with it. They're saying that it's not a big deal, and you deal with it, but you know you're not happy about it. You deal with it, but it still makes you uncomfortable and is having a negative impact on you. And this is why I say, listen, your feelings matter. And it's not necessarily always about whether someone else thinks that should be an acceptable thing or not. It's about what you are comfortable with. Now, yes, are there some instances where people's actual insecurities are pouring over into how they uh, manage their current situation or relationship? Absolutely. Are some people projecting their insecurities onto their partner? Absolutely. But there's also situations where you're insecure because they're acting shady. You're insecure because they're behaving in ways that is probably your spidey senses is going off. Your intuition, all right, is going off, and you're not truly embracing it because sometimes it's like, well, I don't have evidence, even though I feel this kind of way, so maybe I should just leave it alone. But then you're now accepting things that you're not really okay with. So, anyways, you can't let that happen. You should not let that happen. And you gotta discuss what you find appropriate and inappropriate in a relationship. All right, so next one, and this to me is very big. Well, the last two are very big. And what I want you to do, or how to handle a man who is flirting with other women or not setting boundaries with them, is do not just move on, make sure you heal. So this is what I'm saying. Let's look at it from two angles. Let's first look at moving on, as in, all right, this stuff happened and you've decided that you're not going to leave the relationship, that you're going to proceed with this man, okay? The problem is, if you're just proceeding in a way that sweeps things under the rug, you're setting up a future failure. So it's kind of like, literally picture sweeping it under the rug. The reality is that it's probably not going to be the only thing you sweep under the rug, and you're going to keep sweeping things under the rug. And what's going to happen is a pile of dirt and garbage is going to pile up under that rug, and eventually it's going to be a mess. All right. And so you have to make sure you're not just trying to ignore it or be numb to the issue. You have to make sure that you're not, it's also not just an extension of other problems. So a lot of times people are so focused on that specific issue. So I'm going to keep using the whole liking pictures on Instagram, right? And my thing is, why are we so fixated on just the liking the pictures when we also have an issue of poor communication? We also have an issue of disrespect. We have several other issues that are not being addressed, yet we're fixating on this one thing. And so now when we move on from this one thing, we're still ignoring the rest. And it's like, no. When something happens, look at it as an opportunity to address all concerns. And I know sometimes we may feel like, but that might be too much depending on what we let pile up over time. But if we keep kicking the can down the road, it never gets resolved, and it's just a ticking time bomb. And so what happens in a lot of cases is that, again, let's say there's multiple issues. You fixate on the one issue. You decide you're going to move on from that issue. And I completely lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere really good with this, and now I just went blank. So scratch that. But let's look at the other type of moving on. There's the moving on as in you actually let go, right? You walked away from that man. But the problem is, are you walking away with a scar? Are you walking away holding on to a negative perception of men and relationships that you're now going to project on the next person you deal with? So that's why I say you can't just move on, you have to heal. Even if you're going to move on with him. So going back to actually staying with him. Like to me, some situations, let's just say he's willing to correct it. He corrects it. But that experience still hurts you, right? So him correcting it is great. But if you don't resolve and heal the hurt, that will also turn into another problem. So you still have to take a moment to heal from what just happened. Heal from what you may feel was betrayal. Heal from what you feel is now broken trust. Whatever it is, you've got to flush that out of your system, because if you don't, you're going to hinder your ability to have a healthy, happy relationship, even if he actually changes his ways. And that's why you'll have some situations where the man actually changes or fixes or whatever, and he feels like, man, she won't let this go. She's just holding this over my head and nothing's working anymore. And then that creates other issues and the whole thing falls apart. And it's because we never flushed out that negativity. And then going back to, even if you move on from him, carrying into the next relationship, and that's sabotaging your future relationships. So there's nothing wrong with whatever you ultimately choose to do, as long as you do your due diligence, right? And I'm praying you do what's truly best in that situation, but you got to make sure healing is a part of that process. All right, so remember I said there was a couple that were big that I really wanted to stress. And so this other one, on how to handle a man that's flirting with other women, is do not internalize the issue. So here's an example that I come across a lot. Let's say you're a woman of a certain body type. I'm not specifying what body type, whatever body type, okay? And then you see this man, whether he's liking pictures or just looking at them, whatever, the women don't look like you. The women aren't shaped like you. They're complete opposite of you. And it starts to make you feel like, well, damn, does he really want me? Or is that what he wants? Does he really like what I bring to the table physically and attraction wise? Or is there something going on here? It can create a level of insecurity in that woman. And what I want a woman to understand is, like, that's such a pitfall for so many, because one, you're internalizing something that may not even really be the case. And I know that may seem confusing, but understand this. There are, and I'm not saying this to say it's appropriate, it's okay, whatever. I'm just speaking to the reality of it. There are men who, they may lust after a certain type, right? But they don't consider that type who they would be with, who they would potentially marry, who they would spend their life with or have raised their kids. Okay? For a lot of men, lust, love, two different things. Okay? Now, yes, I think a lot of people, if they're honest about it, you want to feel like it's your type that's lusted and loved from him, like it's all in alignment with each other. But that's just not always the reality of it. And so his lust of that does not mean he does not have value of you. His attraction to that does not mean he's not highly attracted to you. All right? And so when you internalize it, though, and you allow it to start to second guess yourself and question yourself and all these types of things, now it affects you. It may stress you out. I've seen situations, even if it's not about him liking or lusting after other types of women, when a woman is not feeling good about herself, or is even questioning the attraction her man has towards her, well, guess what? She's probably not going to be as receptive in the bedroom. She's not going to probably be as comfortable being intimate with this man. It's going to start to have a negative effect in a lot of ways. All right. As well as, if you internalize it, you may then carry that, well, I'm not good enough idea. And I don't want women to fall into that way of thinking, because listen, in life, even when things don't work out with someone, it's not necessarily about I'm not good enough. It's you're not for him, just as he's not for you. Like, sometimes relationships falling apart are just proof or an example of two people who don't fit together. But if you view it as I am not good enough, I lack things, then you will struggle to embrace the man who sees your value. You will struggle to believe the man who is so into you, so attracted to you, telling you that you're beautiful, but you're holding on to what you felt was rejection, and this man going to other women and letting that mess with your head. And you can't do that. Now, I have to say this, and I say this with love. I'm not saying that sometimes there aren't things that we need to improve about ourselves. Of course, right? But I don't want you to internalize in a way that you beat yourself up, that you lose sight of your value, that you don't embrace your worth, that you carry negative energy. That's not that's not what we want. That's unhealthy. Okay. So there's this balance, there's this dance we have to have with recognizing when there are things we can improve, but also when we are just not the right match for someone, the right fit for them. Okay. So do not internalize these experiences of this man flirting with someone else or not setting boundaries or all these different things. View it as simple evidence, if we've addressed it and it's not being corrected, evidence of you don't belong there. That's it. But there's going to be a man that you can align yourself with that will embrace your boundaries, that you can create a harmonious, loving relationship with. Thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on 5 clear signs a man doesn't respect you. First, let me say, it's one thing if we're talking about a man that you are married to. That's a completely different story. That does not count. If we're talking about a man that you've been in a long-term relationship with,